Hi, it's Roger here, and we're ready to go. Welcome to our webinar, which is all about how to thrive in tough times. We've had amazing response. There are over, I believe, 2,000 who have responded in less than a week to come and join us here. So we are running these 3 different sessions today. Thank you for coming and joining us. Hopefully you're watching this live. If not, well, it might be the recording you're looking at. And I'm going to be sharing on this webinar over the next 90 minutes what are the top 5 key things you can do to really grow cash flow in your current state. Whether you are in a startup business, whether you have got a larger company where you're trying to manage all your costs, whether you are in a job and you're trying to figure out how to actually make sure ends meet because you're not able to get to work right now. Whatever form you're in, the things I'm going to share are going to be relevant to you. And what I'm going to do before I get into those 5 keys is I am also going to share with you a little bit about me and what's really going on in the world from my point of view. And hopefully from this, you're going to get some really great steps that you can share with the people around you as well. So let's get right into it. First thing I would love to do for everyone here is that if you just drop whoever you are, whatever your name is, and wherever you are in the world into the comments, that'd be great. We have got the team here who are going to be actually sharing and interacting as we go through this as well. I want to share my screen for a few things just to kick it off. First one is this here is the page I'm very sure you got on to actually get onto this call in the first place. So like I mentioned, we are going to be mentioning a couple of different things in different ways. The 5 things I'm going to cover actually are these in a slightly different form, as you will see, because things are moving quickly at the moment. And if you have not ever met me before, or if you are just getting caught up on the things that we're doing, this is my website. Team can drop a link in this as well. I am an active entrepreneur. We are leading the entrepreneur movement right now with 1.4 million entrepreneurs on our platform. We run events all over the world. We have our entrepreneur resorts, which are right in the midst of this entire shutdown at the moment. While our Czech Republic resort is down, we are still operating right now in Bali and in South Africa. But we've been seriously impacted by what's happening. You'll find all the information about me and what we're doing with Genius Group and the growth of Genius Group. I'm going to share with you on this call the things that we are doing and what we have already started putting in place as a result of what's happening with the downturn at the moment and with the crisis. And you'll find all the videos and everything here as well, because my goal is to keep on sharing the very best information that I can with you, because we are at the very beginning of a 10-year journey to 2030. And holy cow, what a start to the new decade, hey? So this here gives you all the links, all the ways to connect with me as well. Let's make this an ongoing journey. What I'll also say is if you, for any reason, aren't able to put the chat in the comments or anything like that, you can go to my Facebook page. And on here, I just posted actually the post on the links. And you can just drop a link down here to say hi and any comments you'd like to leave with me so that I can come back to them later, because obviously the chats don't really stay, right? So you can actually do that as well. If you have not had an opportunity to see the live session that I did yesterday, go have a look at that, because this here gives a lot of detail, which is in addition to what I'm going to give on this call here. And it really is about like the take on where we're at and where we're going. And then you're also going to find that there's a number of different posts that I've been doing in here as well that you would find, I believe, valuable if you want to keep up to date with the latest things going on. So do make sure that you'll keep in touch with us. And also YouTube. I'm going to be posting on the YouTube channel I have, which again, the team will give you the link to. On this one here, we're going to be posting all the things that are happening as events unfold in the coming weeks and coming months as well. So that's the first thing I wanted to share. Second thing I wanted to share is just a little bit of an overview of how I see things right now. And this really gives you a bit of a perspective of how we are advising our own partners and our everyone that we are working with all around the world, all our event organizers. We do a lot of events. We have got right now about 50 different cities where we run events every single month, which all have been impacted by what's happening right now as well. I'm quite well known for all of my talk on exponentials, because in our Global Entrepreneur Summit that we run around the world, we talk about what the top 10 trends that are coming. And exponentials are all about what happens when you start doubling up things like computing power, things like the speed in our development of new technologies, and how exponentials are actually very difficult for people to get their heads around, because we tend to be linear animals. And it just so happens that what's going on with the coronavirus is an exponential.
And once you know it for what it is, you start to see why things are accelerating so quickly. And what I'm going to be sharing within these 5 keys is how do you start thinking in an exponential way as well? Like how do you actually make sure that with your team, you're able to zoom very quickly into a different way of doing things? Because right now, it's not going to be the survival of the biggest. It's going to be the survival of the nimblest. It's going to be those who actually can adjust quickly and shift to the current situation, which is very, very different from everything we've ever seen before. So when we talk about exponentials, let me first of all just share a bit on what I see happening right now with the health crisis with coronavirus, and then what I see happening right now with the economy. And this gives you a bit of a picture through my eyes of what we are now doing as a result of this, because we're moving very quickly, and I recommend that you do too. And first of all, let me just go through a couple of different links. These links, you might have seen some of these already. This link here is the one from CNN, which actually gives you a effectively animation from the very beginning of January all the way through. And you can see just how fast this is accelerating, where it's accelerating in the world in terms of number of cases and number of deaths with coronavirus, and just how much faster it starts accelerating as you get past 100,000. And this isn't even up to date, right? We're well over 200,000 now. And so as we are seeing this grow, there is so much noise in the world about what's happening and how it's happening. I tend to look for data, right? Because data actually allows us to see what's really happening. And I'm going to be sharing that with you as well in terms of your cash flow. The most important thing is how you design your life so that you're actually watching the data and you're not getting carried away by any panic or fear that's taken over. So I also go to the World Health Organization, where they have a situation report every day. So there's a link to that as well. I also include this link inside my live video on Facebook. So if you can't find it, you can just go and have a look there. And you'll see that every day they actually post what's the latest, what's happening, graphs and what's going on as well. And the one I find most helpful is the one that Worldometer's put together, which actually gives you total number of cases, deaths. This is all from yesterday. It actually shows the actual graph. And you can see just how accelerated it's actually become over the last week, and in all cases, and deaths. And I was also sharing quite recently with our team that when you look at what has happened in China, for example, where really the cases are starting to accelerate again, but when they got things under control, they actually closed off, all of Wuhan, like they actually closed off 13 different cities right at the very, very beginning when they only had 500 cases. So everything that then grew after that was after they had actually already put their cities in lockdown. And then you've also got the same in terms of number of deaths. It was actually at the end of January when they actually started tracking, Worldometer started tracking this. And you can see that it actually then levels out because of that. And if we're looking in the future and saying, well, imagine that other country, like your country, wherever you are in the world right now, that you actually were as quick and as decisive as China was at actually locking things down, how long would it take before things actually started calming down again? You can kind of see that it's going to take a full month. It took all the way to the middle of, like a month after they actually did the lockdown. It was a full month before it peaked, and then it started coming down again. However, the rest of the world isn't actually locking down in anything like the same way. So while this is China, and you can see how China worked, if you look at something like Italy, China at its maximum in terms of cases and in deaths, the most deaths they were having were like 140 per day at the peak. If you look at Italy, Italy has a very different curve. It keeps on going upwards, right? And you can see that the number of cases keeps on growing as well. And this doesn't even include the last day where it actually went up even further. You can see here that, here we are, total new cases, which I believe is on this link here, right? Like if you actually look, it's actually got a list of every single country and exactly cases and deaths. And Italy, 475 new deaths, 4,000 new cases. This is still on an exponential curve, and exponentials take a while before they actually start like leveling out again. And you can see also the deaths keep on accelerating as well. And clearly in Italy, we've all heard about just how much the entire healthcare system has been overridden. And here you can see the daily deaths are actually more than double at the peak in China, and it's still going upwards. So we're a long way from us. We can't even say in a month's time, things will be under control necessarily in Italy, because they haven't had that same level early enough of actually locking down the entire country as China did. Now, if we actually take that and say, well, what about US, UK? Like if you're in one of those countries right now, and most other countries are on that same trajectory at the moment, where are they sitting at the moment? If you take a place like the United States, as of just this last day, you can see here that the total number of deaths was 18, total number of new cases 1,600. This is, all these numbers are doubling every 4 days right now. That's what exponentials do. So they just become quite incredible at how fast the numbers actually start growing. And in the US and UK at this moment, we still don't have people actually restricted to their homes. I mean, right now I'm actually videoing this from Poland. So I'm in Poland at the moment, and in Warsaw, we're in our house. Like we're not able to leave our house. Czech Republic actually has military checks on houses to make sure you're not actually getting out there, because same as in China, that's what actually stopped the virus from spreading eventually. But we're still not doing that in places like the US and UK. So in the US, for example, if you take the numbers as they are here, this actually breaks it down by state. As I mentioned, we've got here, a number like, 18 deaths or at this point now, 8,000 cases. When I was sharing just a few days ago, we were actually at about half that number. If you look at Italy and say, well, when was Italy at 8,000 cases? And you can see, because you've got the deaths, you've got the cases, that the total cases when it hit 8,000 was here. It was basically March the 9th. So most people hadn't at that point, that was just a week ago, or more like 10 days ago. At that point, people hadn't, and we're actually tracking almost exactly in the US 10 days behind Italy in terms of the growth. But I think America is going to be more exponential. So by the time we're 10 days time, we'll have a lot more cases of this and a lot more deaths in this. Unless the one thing that we all hope happens, which is a long shot, which is that we find a cure. That's the only way that this actually slows down, because when it's actually in the environment already and in the community, it doesn't just slow down on its own. So we have that in the US. And if you say, well, what about the UK? You can see here in the UK, the number that we have here is a total of 2,600 cases now. And if you go to the UK, you can see those numbers here. And we're seeing a very exponential graph in the UK as well. In fact, even more exponential. On deaths, super exponential. And so if we actually then compare that to Italy and say, well, when was Italy at a point where it had 2,600 deaths? Here is the Italy graph again. We can see active cases, 2,600. It's actually only a few days earlier, right? Here it is, but March the 4th. So effectively, at the moment, UK is 3 days behind America. America is 10 days behind Italy. And these graphs, this is maths, these graphs actually are going to keep on going exponential, because while we all as humans are unpredictable in small numbers, we are very predictable in large numbers. And this all links also into logarithmic scales, which actually allows you, a logarithmic scale basically is not like a linear, which is just like, 10, 20, 30. A logarithmic scale, if I go into, let's say, total number of cases, for example, here's a statistic, or let me just get the ones at the bottom here. Okay, so you can see here, number of cases, this curve looks like this when it's exponential, because you're actually got a linear, 2,000, 4,000, 6,000. Logarithmic is when it goes 100, 1,000, 10,000. You can see it's almost a straight line, which means it's almost a perfect exponential in the way that it's growing. And of course, above 10,000 is 100,000 is a million. The swine flu in 2010 killed 200,000 people. It was big, but it was nothing like as big as what we're seeing at the moment. And the biggest challenge to all of this is not necessarily the threat to you personally, because what this actually does on this link here is it gives all the stats, even when it comes down to, let's say, for example, age. So I'm not saying all of this because I want to be focusing at the health side and scaring anyone here who's listening to this, because this is much more about the economic side. But obviously you need to be safe. Everyone can be a carrier, even if you actually don't have a fatality over it. But you can see that pretty much all the way up until when you get to 60 years old, the actual percentage of death rate at the moment anyway is fairly low. Like the normal flu, 0.1%, so 0.2% all the way up to 40 years old is double the flu. But it's not like 20, 30, 50 times the flu, but it does become that dangerous when you actually become older at the moment. And of course, if you have other health issues, then of course you're at high risk as well. The bottom line to all of this isn't the fact that that we don't have a major crisis on our hands. The biggest thing around all of this is that there's no actual clear end in sight, because until that curve actually tops off and the governments and all of us do enough to control it, until that happens, and at the moment it looks like the only way that that can happen is that we are separating ourselves from each other, at least in the real world, not in the virtual world, but in the real world, by separating ourselves from each other, for any company that is relying on that high touch face-to-face, those companies will all fail because most companies cannot go for 3 or 4 months with no revenues or very low revenues unless you go and reinvent yourself. So this is not just something for you and me where we have small companies or companies that are, you know, $10 million, $100 million in size at the biggest. These are the billion-dollar businesses this is impacting as well, or at least in some form of it. So I'm sharing all of that because I wanted to just give this first 30 minutes across to basically what's going on, where things are heading, and the fact that we are currently living, I believe, in the most disruptive moment in history that we have had in the last 100 years and at scale ever in history. Like, we've never had 7 billion people with so many in lockdown at a time when we are so dependent on each other for everything from cash flow to how we actually deliver value and so on. But at the same time, we have never had more in terms of being equipped with the ability to actually overcome it, provided you know what tools to use and how we work with each other, which is what this is going to be all about. Let me also add one extra thing in here as well, which is basically what is the impact of all of this already when it comes to the economy. So the first thing I want to share is that when I was, first of all, sharing a year ago, the investor call that we have, because we have a whole group of investors inside our community. So we were sharing with our investors what is coming up. And I was already saying, well, we're going to be having a major recession. There's going to be a crash. I believe that was going to happen within 12 months. It's exactly happened in 12 months, but absolutely didn't have any idea it was going to happen linked to the coronavirus. And what's very important here is what I was sharing right then, which actually is the first of the keys, which I'm going to go through with you right now, where the very first of the keys is linked to what happens when something we don't necessarily comprehend or aren't able to understand shows up in our lives. This here is the first of the slides I want to share with you, which is cash flow key number 1, fight versus fright. If you remember back at the new millennium, like in 2004, when the Asian tsunami came, I was based in Singapore. We had our place in Bali. And in 2004, when the tsunami came, I still remember the pictures and the videos of the tourists standing on the beach, watching this massive wave coming. They just couldn't get what they were seeing. They were like totally mesmerized by this wave. And when they finally got just how massive this was and how fast it was coming, they started running, but so many of them got caught up in it. Like if they'd actually gone for high ground faster, they would have been fine. But because they actually were just there watching this thing, it was just too late. I still remember in 2008 when the financial crisis came, we were in a very similar situation. We hadn't seen anything of that size before. And I still remember it was a good 3 months where we saw just more and more people closing their doors, more and more people stopping to do business. We saw like it was harder and harder to actually collect money in or to generate revenues. And so if we had actually realized that at the very beginning, when you still had time to run, when you're still on the beach and you could go for high ground, we would have just immediately changed and shifted, which is what we're doing right now, which is why this is such an important call that we're having right now. But when we go back and think about how many people haven't been through a situation like this before. I mean, I've been through the 1986 Black Monday crash and what happened with the recession in the late 80s, early 90s. I remember very clearly, even the Asian crisis in 1997 when I first came to Singapore. I remember the 2001 dot-com bust. I had a dot-com at that time while we were going through that. And then obviously there was a 2008 global financial crisis. And every one of these, you get that there are very specific keys that you can actually follow. This first one here, fight versus fright, is realizing that now's the time for action. Like fright is where you're just kind of frozen, right? In fact, there's actually 3 things. It's not just fight versus fright. It's fight, fright, and flight, right? Because flight is where you actually are taking action, but they're all negative actions, or they're all the ones where you're just kind of battening down. Whereas fight is where you say, you know what? There's a way for us to actually turn this into an opportunity. So we're doing that with our team right now. We're saying, how do we grow? This is my big question for you with fight versus fright. How do you grow your revenues by 20% while reducing your cost by 40% during these times? Because you're going to have to do something different from what you're doing in order for that to happen. And you have to make some really tough decisions to make that happen as well. And whether you're a sole operator or whether you happen to have 100 staff, it's the same question, right? How do you just cut your costs right down? And then also, like at the end of the day, the only way you're going to survive this is that you don't run out of cash, right? So the key thing is how do you make sure you're not running out of cash and you're actually doing it in a really effective way? I'm going to give you those ways as we jump into the call now. But fight versus fright is also about being real about what's really happening right now. So when I was sharing a year ago and saying, look, there's warning signs already in the market. you know, the universe is very convenient in that it actually is quite considerate. It gives us these signs as we go. So the US yield curve, which basically is the relationship between long-term and short-term debt, and when it reverses, it inverses, it's basically when, you know, people actually are so looking for safety that you end up actually getting higher interest rates on short-term than on long-term. And every time this has happened, it's actually been led almost immediately afterwards with a recession. It happened just before the 1990 shock. It happened in 2001. This is 86. This was 2001. This was 2008. And then it happened again this time last year, and it stayed negative all the way through the year. Not a surprise that what's happening now is happening. And what we said to our investors at that point is get stocked up in cash, make sure that you've got a strategy which is sustainable, make sure that you're not just relying on your next funding round, but you actually have got ways to make sure the cash is growing. And of course, everyone who was following that advice at the time is in a much, much stronger position now than they would be otherwise, right? And that includes us. We made sure that we had cash stockpiles. But even that, if you actually have even big companies that have got hundreds of millions sitting in the bank, if they end up with like their sales going down too far without managing their costs, that money doesn't last that long. So we already had that. We were sharing already what was the situation with money itself. That like this next crash is going to be far more than an asset crash in terms of companies going down or properties being foreclosed on. This will eventually become a currency crash because we were already sharing just how much governments were printing out money. And then this is the US national debt, and you can see just how much it's grown since 2012. This is like, imagine your credit card every time you go back to the bank and they say, okay, you've hit your limit. And then Congress says, okay, you can have higher more again. And it just kept on going up and up and up until eventually it's like well over, you know, 23 trillion. And this has actually gone up 2 trillion just in the last week as a result of what the Fed's been doing. And that's the blue curve here. This red one is China. So China's been like opening money supply even further. And all of this is debt built, and it's government debt, which means at some point, if people don't want that to hold that debt anymore, then that money starts dropping in value very, very quickly, which we're already seeing in the world today. So if we say, well, what is happening in the world today? What can we actually see happening that was already being predicted a year ago? And this was not just a year ago. I was talking about this pretty much at every event we had. So if you've been to any of my events, you know I was talking about this as well. The only question is whether you were doing something about it at that point or not. And what I'm going to share today, by the way, isn't just like if you didn't do something, then you're in trouble. It's that we're all in trouble right now. So the most important thing is to do things off of what we're actually talking about on this call right now today. So let me share with you some slides of what's, I'll come back to these ones. I'm going to share some slides of what's going on in the world right now, which I really believe is like super important to be knowing about. This here, Dow has officially erased all gains minted during the Trump presidency. This is Wednesday's news, where the Dow Jones Index has now gone down over 30%. My sense is it's going to go down over 50%, not immediately, maybe in the next couple of weeks if things don't have some good news soon, but it's certainly within these couple of months, it will go down to 50% because that's what's happened in past crashes like this as well. So I wouldn't be jumping in and buying in the stock market right now. So the stock markets clearly are seeing this big drop. You've seen this is what's been happening. You know, the president of the US, Trump came in around here, and then you can see that since the beginning of his like term 2017, it was like around just over 900. It's now less than that, right? So and this is like dropping like a rock at the moment. This is not just obviously Dow Jones; it's happening all around the world as well. ASX has also had a really hard fight. In fact, all the stock markets have had a really, really bad time. And we have seen stock market volatility hit records that are above anything that we've seen ever since, you know, like the last 50 years. So like this is like much more than even during the global financial crisis. And we're right at the beginning of it, right? So all the stuff I'm saying is there's a big wave coming. We haven't seen anything yet. And what's most important is for you to actually look at this and say, okay, is this going to be Fright or is it going to be Fight? Chinese economy collapse is a great thing about the internet and about the world is that countries are going at different paces. China effectively is 2 months ahead of the rest of the world. So we can look and see already what was the impact on the Chinese economy. It totally collapsed in the first quarter. I mean, we basically saw numbers drop, you know, 20% Chinese retail. You know, this, like if you look at where things were closed down, it wasn't all of China, right? It was basically in some of the major cities. It was mainly around Wuhan. Like what we're actually seeing is the entire country freezing up a quarter, you know, 25% of all of its investments. And this basically is putting China into the beginnings of what's going to be a recession, as is the rest of the world. So this is going to be something that's going to last several years. I remember back in 2008, we had to have a strategy that lasted for over 2.5 years before things really turned around. This doesn't mean you can't be successful. It just means you have to have a very different strategy to do it. And you have to start the strategy now. And that's why it's so, so important for us to be connecting with all the knowledge that I'm going to be sharing here, and that you can be finding out from others out there that have been through this as well. Federal Reserve cuts rates to 0 and launches massive $700 billion quantitative easing program. That is another way of saying printing money. They're just like basically just gone crazy over it. Here's a quote from another thing on exactly the same thing. This is much more like QE. QE stands for quantum easing, which is a fancy way of saying printing money. Infinity, right? Basically, like we're at a point at the moment where they're putting no limits on it, right? It's like, you know, you maxed out your credit card, now just go spend as much as you want, and we'll figure out how you pay for it later. We're seeing already currencies swinging like crazy. The pound plunges to its lowest level in over 30 years. And this is against the US dollar, which is getting printed like crazy, but everyone's still seeing the US dollar as a safe haven. The moment that changes, which it will, because you can't keep on just printing money forever, then the US dollar will collapse. So I'm saying this stuff now, again, a year ago when I was saying, look, there's going to be a crash, and many people didn't really like take it seriously. Me saying there's a dollar collapse now, some of you may not take that seriously as well, but if all your money is in US dollars or in pounds, you have to have a strategy that isn't going to make you in a year or two go, what was I even thinking? I heard that I should be getting out of the currency, or at least hedging against the currency. I didn't pay attention. And now all that hard work that I did to make the money I had, that money's worth a quarter of what it used to be. So this is all part and parcel of also knowing that there is always going to be a converse. Where does all the money go when people get out of the stock market, when they actually start not spending money? It goes into cash. All signs of cash crunch is gripping markets in the economy. This is the actual cash pile. Investors have piled $137 billion into cash-like assets, which effectively are deposits. It's ways to just get the money out of cash. It's just gone up to like crazy, which means there's more people now with disposable income than ever. There's more people with cash to invest than ever, because they've taken it out of the markets, they've taken it out from buying things. If you know how to access into that, that makes all the difference. So this very, very first step, which is this step, which is all about fight versus fright, is you deciding if there's a wave coming. The fright is where you just stand there. The flight is when you run. So this is the difference of sink and swim, right? Sink and swim is fright and flight. But if you surf, if you say, wait, there's a wave coming, if I surf that wave, that will make all the difference. That's what allows you to really get the results. So what is examples of us actually going ahead and doing this, like actually making that happen? I had a conversation today with one of the companies that we're in the process of acquiring, because we're in this acquisition strategy. We have just been working with our investment bankers in New York who have been postponing calls recently, because we had our plan this year for our IPO. We're still going to IPO. We are still going to make that happen, because I really believe within 12 months from now, we will be at the bottom of the market and coming out the other side, even if the recession is still on, just like in the same way the stock markets recovered long before the global financial crisis was over and started going up. That the same is going to happen. And so provided we get through this process and are in a much stronger position, then we're going to be able to actually still be listing the company. So I was having a conversation about this 12-month plan we have with them. And in that process of going through that, we're going through acquisitions, which obviously, if you have got everyone struggling, acquisitions become a lot easier as well, if you have the money to do the acquisitions. And so when I was having a conversation with these guys who are in the US, they were saying, look, we have to go digital. We have to actually get our digital platform in place and get it going. We've got to cut our costs down. And I said to them, well, look, we spoke last week. Here we are this week. What have you done? And they said, well, we're still talking about doing it. And I said, so you haven't actually done any of that yet? And she goes, no. And I go, well, now's the time to be doing it. Like action has to be now. And I explained what we have done already, right? We asked that question, how do we increase revenues by 20% while decreasing costs by 40%? First thing we did was we got the whole team together and we changed frequency. So when you, like, if you are in a football game and you're losing, and it's like, is it fright or is it fight? If you're going to get going, you got to change frequency. When things are going exponential, instead of us meeting every week, which is what we're doing, we had a very nice rhythm. Every Wednesday, we'd all meet as one big team globally. So we have about 350 staff, and we'd have one global meeting. We all get on board, and our leaders would meet once a week on that. We're now meeting every single day. So every day, 8:30 in the morning, we're having a call where we're saying, right, okay, what's changed in the last 24 hours. And right now, every 24 hours is as much as a week, if not more, in terms of what happens during that time. Second thing we did once we changed that rhythm is we said, okay, here's our priorities. Number one, cut our costs down. So we actually have got a task force right now where we're just dramatically cutting our costs down. What do we need to do with our team? What do we need to do in terms of our commitments for the future? Not just cost, but also cash coming in. What are things we can do to actually encourage people to come in? So we put a promotion together, which is a crisis special, where we basically say, look, we've already got customers who are our loyal fans. Let's go to them and say, listen, like let's do a win-win. We're taking our same products that you normally buy at full price. There are 40% off right now for you to come on board. These are like one-to-one calls we're having with our top clients. We're saying, because you've actually served us for so long and we want to keep the business with you, let's do this in a way that we give you a big benefit right now for committing for the future, for already putting your first payments down. You get the benefit of that big discount, and we'll still be working through the future with all the training and support we give you. And at the same time, we get the benefit of knowing that we're going to still be working together, and then we can just get on with it without basically worrying about our relationship with each other. And that's having amazing effects at the moment, so that our sales are actually going up. The second thing that we said is we also want to make sure that we are really giving value to everyone within our community right now. So let's up our communication. So if you've seen my Facebook page, the communication's gone up, and so has the sharing, because everyone's at home, everyone's got more time, everyone's looking for answers. And even this webinar, perfect example. Yes, we do get people coming for our webinars, but we don't get 2,000 in 4 days. But that's happening again because we are not asking the question, how do we sell our products? In fact, the things we're even offering right now are not the things we normally sell at the normal price. It's not about how do we sell our products, it's about how do we solve our customer's problem. So on this very first step, how do you solve your customer's problem is so important to ask yourself, because they have different problems today than they had a month ago. And so if you're still trying to sell the products that you had that were solving their problem a month ago, when they have a totally different sense of urgency, they have a totally different concept of how they want to spend their money, this is not the time to be out there basically trying to tell them this is the product you want to sell them. And if you're trying to do that, you're going to find it really tough to do it. This is a time to be asking, okay, what's the real problem that they've got, and how do I help solve that problem? And so again, the company that we're working with is an education company. They're like, hey, you know what? There's kids at home, there's students at home. I said, if you were to start straight away today a program where you took your curriculum, you set up the first thing, which is the biggest problem parents have, which is that kids are at home and the parents are trying to figure stuff out. Now they're going to look after their kids, so the kids aren't going to school. And you actually created a community which allowed everyone to come on board, be part of that community, set a low price, like $10 a day or something, to actually have the team to look after their kids, provide accelerated learning. If you did that on the one hand, and then at the same time, the teachers, they were trying to figure out how do they remotely teach the kids with all their programs, just make sure that you've got a program for the teachers as well. They'll pay to actually have a way to connect with each other and find out best practice as well. Just don't charge much at this point, but once you build trust with them, there'll be other programs they'll actually want from you, because now they're actually building that trust with each other. So there's always a way very quickly to be able to see that even in today's market, when there are more problems than ever, when you're focused at solving people's problems, it changes everything. So think about that for your own clients right now. The second thing is, once we actually saw that and saw the shift and change that was happening, we then also said, okay, we've first of all got what we're going to do with our own costs, what we're going to do to actually increase revenues by being able to support all the people we have. And then the third thing is, it gives us a chance to realize that what's actually happening right now is not so much a crisis as an acceleration. Meaning that all the things that we already believed were going to be happening with education, for example, now we're forced to actually put the things we wanted to put in place. We thought it would happen over 4 or 5 years, that the old education system would eventually change towards much more entrepreneur education, like people figuring out how to create a job as opposed to get a job. But it's happened so fast now, we all have to go out and create a job, right? We can't just rely on the job we have. So it's accelerated. What we were looking at before, which was the fact that we believe that there is communities that could be created that would enable you to create trust no matter what. One of the exercises that we do at our events is we ask the question, if you woke up tomorrow and money was gone, what would you do? And we all straight away say we'd barter with each other. We'd get together and see what we can trade with each other. We create our own currency, right? So all the things around digital currencies, the things around how we actually work with each other, we realized all these things were accelerating as well. So one of the things that we're putting together for our community is we're putting together a buying and selling club. And the way it works is, if you wanted to make $2,000, you would basically come onto it with whatever your programs are. The two big things you can sell today is either, number one, you can sell something digital or something remote, so we can actually be speaking to someone without physically being in front of them. Many people don't have those kind of products, but we know how to create them because we're doing them all the time. Or number two, something which is a future product. Like, you know, we're packaging up resort trips to our resorts, for example, and we say, hey, you can do this later in the year. We'll give you a special rate for it now. And then that way you save yourself some money, and you know you've got that happening as soon as they're lifting up the travel bans. And people are going, great, okay, well, I wanted to do that anyway. I'll go for that. And so there's future business you can provide. Just had a conversation recently with Deborah and Jeremy Harris, who are based in Australia. Their business is a virtual CFO business where they're helping clients to actually really get their numbers in place. Their business is just growing like crazy now because people already know of them and are trusting them to be the ones that are going to give them strategic advice on their numbers. So of course they're actually getting all these calls. There's things that you can do that you're trusted for as well that will solve people's problems right now. And provided it's doing one of these two things, you can actually get that result. So what we're doing with the Buyers Club is saying the only two things stopping us from selling products is either number one, we don't know how to do it, or number two, we don't have a motivated group of buyers. So what happened during the Great Depression is during that time when people couldn't access money, where they couldn't get jobs, they started creating community co-ops. They said, okay, let's create our own currency where we can actually just trade with each other. And we can make sure that, you know, if you want to make 2,000, I want to make 2,000, I'll put my products in, you put your products in, I'll buy some of your products, you buy some of my products, we would start making money again. So we're doing this on a global scale using Genius Dollars, which is our currency, and bringing together all our most trusted partners that we know have good products to share with each other, whether someone's doing finance accounting, whether someone is, you know, helping to grow someone's business, whether someone's doing digital marketing, making phone calls, whatever it is helping other companies that need that help to actually grow as well. And I'm going to go more in detail in terms of what those steps are as we go forward too. So the very first thing is you make the decision. Is this about fright, where it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do, and you're paralyzed? Or is it about fight, which means circle the wagons? You know, what happened in the Wild West was at the times when there was danger, you bring the wagons together, you build a campfire, and you say, right, we're actually stronger together. So this is a time to connect with others to actually make that work. Okay, so that brings me on to the second thing, right? So if the first one is all about just having those strategies that allow you to go, like, now's the time. I cannot be waiting another week. Every day counts, and I have to set up every day for success. Then the next thing is, how do you actually then make sure that you're going from that first step to the second step, which is if cash flow key number one is all about making sure that you're seeing things for what they are, and you realize that this is going to be something which is going to last several years. Number two is cash versus crash. This is not just about the market crash, it's about your company crash or your life crash. It's about the extent to which you actually are keeping yourself afloat with cash, and what are the ways that you're actually doing it. What's really important about this next step is that for most of us, we haven't actually sat down yet and just mapped out to say everything's going to be okay, right? So this is the third thing we're doing outside of, okay, we're having our cost strategy, we're having our revenue strategy. The third thing we're then doing is saying, based on that, what does that now look like? Like by the end of March, how much money do we have? How much money are we bringing in? How much is going out? We already had our forecast, but we're going back to that forecast and we're redesigning it. So we've done that. And so it allows us all to look and say, right, that's what we're up to. And everyone in our team is in core groups that are actually doing this as well. I do my Crystal Circle mentoring, where we're doing this with everyone in the Crystal Circle to make sure they've got their numbers, they know what they're actually aiming to go for next, and they're bringing the numbers down to make life as easy as possible. When you start going up the hill, you need to downshift. So this is time to downshift and say, right, what's the steps that actually enable me to really grow, and who's the community that I'm getting connected with as I grow through this as well. So let me show you some examples of what's going on in the world right now, who's doing this the right way, who's doing this the wrong way, and what this is going to mean in terms of what we can expect to see in the news in the coming months. So first of all, this is all from the news. This here, Jim Cramer says Boeing will run out of money if it is not safe. We are going to see all sorts of airlines either go bankrupt or get nationalized, because you simply cannot run an airline where you have no planes flying, right? It's just impossible. Lots of hotels, hospitality, restaurants, this is already going to be happening. We're already seeing this facing, hotel industry facing a catastrophe, suppliers seeking $250 billion bailout package. For many people, this is not going to be coming, right? The government cannot just keep on printing money. It's going to actually impact everyone as money gets devalued. But at this point, you're seeing entire industries where this is happening. General Motors, Ford, and Fiat Chrysler to temporarily close all US factories due to the coronavirus. So same thing happening here. You've actually got the entire industrial heart of a company, the manufacturing arm, which has been closed down. But while all that is happening, you've got this kind of thing happening. Amazon to hire 100,000 more workers and give raises to current staff to deal with coronavirus demands. It's like 100,000 more staff. It's like when Amazon eventually drops by 50%, it will be one of the companies I'm investing in, because for sure they have had record days through the last couple of days. And there are others that are doing the same. This is Blue Apron. Blue Apron stock surges 70% as grocery and food delivery spike amid coronavirus crisis. Acquisitions are happening. Costco aims to lift online sales with $1 billion purchase of logistics firms so that they can actually boost what they're doing in terms of their online sales, because that's all growing right now as well. So if you're not doing things which allow you to be able to be remote and generate revenues because you hadn't figured that out yet, you've probably thought about doing it. Now is the time to do it. Now's the time to make that happen. So as an example, when I was saying, we ourselves are looking and saying, what is it people really need right now? If we just go and deliver that to people, what is it that is going to allow us to solve people's problems in a very different way? One thing obviously is us having a call like this, where I can actually go through with you. Here's my view on what's happening. Here's from my experience, the actual steps you can take immediately. Here's the steps we're taking immediately. You can keep following my journey and just walk through that. Or at the same time, we then say, well, what's the next thing? Other than going to our most trusted customers and actually giving them all sorts of specials, what can we do for actually the general public and also all of our own community as well? So one of the communities we have is my Genius Entrepreneur Mastermind. That's a community where we have got about 1,000 people paying $97 a month. I give them one a session a month. We just ran one this week where we actually give everyone an opportunity to hear from the top people and what they're doing around the world, go through all the tools that I have to help people build their business. But that frequency is totally changing. So what we're actually doing is putting in place something which starts this coming Monday, which is called the Cash Flow Crash Course. And we're just doing that for free for the entire community. And I want to share with you the way that we just thought through, what is it people really need? How can we really be of value? I'm not running around the world traveling on all the acquisitions at the moment, or even on all the events at the moment, because we're all in lockdown. So it's like I'm saying that I'm going to invest my time at doubling down on giving communication and giving connection to our core community as well. And if you're not part of our community, you want to be a part of this, let me show you what we put together for two reasons. One, so you can see how we are actually designing new products or new services to help solve people's problems right now. And then number two, because you might want to come and join us as well. And you can actually do that because we'll drop you the link so you can actually go have a look at the page, but at the same time, basically know what we're up to and what we're doing, and know that we're going to be starting on Monday. And what's really important about this whole aspect is, like I said, frequency is up. That's the first thing. Secondly, price is right down. Thirdly, value is right up. And fourth, relevancy is king. Like your ability to right now do exactly what your customer needs and wants in a way that actually they're going to thank you for later. That is critical goal number one. So here is a example of like the kind of things that I believe you can put together, right? That you can actually be designing for your customers. You might just borrow all the top things you're seeing from what we've done and just put them in place for yourself, right? So let me just share my screen and I'll show you what this looks like. And also just the way we're thought through what is going to be going on in the markets next week, what's going to go on the week after, what can we do to hold everyone's hand and actually all be connected together and effectively circle the wagons where we're in a community where we're all learning from each other as well. So while we have this page, which is the one that you use to book into this event, we straight away put another page together. This is all within 4 days, but think about this 4 days, it's almost like 4 weeks, because during these 4 days, we've actually been meeting every single day as a team globally. And so this here, how to rise up and down times, turn the crash to cash in 4-week cash flow crash course with me and the things that we're doing are all about, if you're asking questions, how do I create immediate cash flow in weather coming months? How do I generate sales when borders are closing and everyone's staying away? How bad are things likely to get and for how long? And how can I turn tough times into the ultimate opportunity? And basically who I am and what we're doing, we said, okay, let's actually, for all of our current mastermind members, let's just give them for free all of this. And for anyone else who wants to come in, let's just charge them a nominal amount for them to come join us. 4 weeks of live training, 12 30-minute videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday that I'm going to be doing. Live video Q&As every single week as opposed to every month, which is going to happen every Friday. Our micro degrees, where we actually show people exactly what the tools are that allow you to actually be able to make sure your cash flow is in the right steps. Full set of entrepreneur assessments, which is all the things we do around wealth dynamics, talent dynamics, and knowing what your impact level is. And then also the Entrepreneur Mastermind for a month for those who aren't yet part of it. So you actually get in with all of our top people working with each other. What I mentioned earlier, which is our Buyers and Sellers Club, where we're actually giving people an opportunity to come in and actually like guaranteed money, know you're going to make $2,000 or $5,000 or $10,000 a month, depending on your current size of business, because you're actually posting up your own products at a discount so people get the benefit of that. And at the same time, you're actually buying other people's products too. And as a result, everyone's trading with each other. And the people in our community will explain exactly how that works. But just in the same way it actually took us out of the Great Depression, this is what will take us globally, we believe, as entrepreneurs, out of the global recession, because all of us have got something to give. You've got something to give. It's just a matter of what is it and exactly how can you deliver it online. And by us actually training everyone who comes on board on how to do that, we're converting all sorts of people in terms of the products they're actually generating. And then at the same time, just giving personalized pathways to everybody, which is super important through just having a call and saying, right, here's the next steps to take. So the way we do, and we're also making sure that we're giving a donation to the World Health Organization's COVID-19 response fund. So this is like really, really important, that you're realizing, yeah, there is a limit to what you can get, but there's no limit to what you can give. If you're always basically passing back to the universe, you're helping those that are in need, then it always is giving you a way to keep things in perspective and also be making a difference as well. So we just put this whole thing together in the last 4 days to say, let's make sure that we're actually doing the best that we can do, given that this is a once in a lifetime experience that we're all going through right now. And this is really for anyone. I'm sure any one of you on this call is one of these already, either a startup entrepreneur, a seasoned business owner, an active investor, or an employee looking for a way to generate extra cash flow. So give you an example of what the order is that you need to be thinking about your cash flow. And then I'm going to give you some actual examples of what you can do on your cash flow. We're actually doing this in a way that next Monday, I'm going to be doing a session inside our group where we are going to be explaining like what's going to be coming, and in more detail than I'm giving you right now, very specifically, like here's what to expect, and here's my prediction month by month. Don't ever rely on just my prediction. It might be different timing, but we've been through this enough to know what the pattern and what the cycle is going to look like. Quick fixes already by Wednesday. Okay, fastest way to meet a cash flow, and I'm going to explain 1 or 2 examples of this. So for example, right, like we basically had one of our team members who straight away said, oh, you know what, there's a whole bunch of ways we can actually generate more cash right now. We have got the people we're running events with, we've got our landlord, we're going to go to them, we're going to say everyone's struggling, including us. We want to be paying over 6 months now instead of 1 month. And we're going to actually reward you for that by actually paying you 5% more than we are paying you right now. So like there's a big difference of saying, I'm just going to pay you over time, or just saying, you know, I'm just not even going to call you. I'm just going to just not pay you. And which obviously all reduces trust. But the moment you say, look, I get that by asking something of you, like spreading payments over 6 months is going to cause hurt for you. So I want to reward you for that as well, and reward you basically by giving you more profit, right? Like actually we'll pay you more money. And similarly, like, you know, hey, if you want your customers to pay you early right now, or you want your customers to pay you anything right now, give them a reason for doing it. Give them a discount. So discounts, getting customers to get a win are going to get you cash. Giving your suppliers a win is going to allow you to actually hold on to your cash for longer. But if you haven't thought through what your win is, and you're not systematically going through each of them without even necessarily needing to generate that much more sales at this point, but just shifting your balance sheet in terms of money coming in, money coming out, if you're not doing that, then of course you're going to be running out of money way faster than you actually need to. And so actually having that plan and putting that in place, super duper important. And then also at the same time, super fast ways to actually create cash. One of the people in our community in Seattle, she basically has a real estate company. And so she basically said, look, like with my real estate company, you know, how do I make sure that I still make money, given that I only make money when I'm buying or selling buying or selling properties? And I said, well, the answer is you don't by buying and selling properties, because you're not going to sell a lot of properties right now, unless they happen to be someone desperate to sell. And that's going to be at a super low price. However, over the next 6 months, you can actually be finding really great properties. So this is the time to go out to people who actually have money and want to put it in a property, but know that they've got to get the right timing, and actually put a group together where you could be saying to 20 people, listen, like I'm taking just 20 people. It's $1,000 to be part of this. Over the next 6 months, I'm going to support you in finding the very best property. I'm going to guide you through that process. You pay the $1,000 now. It comes off the money you'll be paying me later in commission when I actually get the property for you. But you're going to see all this value, and you can even take the first or second you know, a call that I do with you for free, just to get the experience of doing this, right? So the immediate way you can actually build cash flow isn't necessarily with the products you have, but it's actually delivering to people what they really are looking for right now today. And there's always a way to do that. Really super important to be thinking in that way, just like I was saying earlier, with the ideas of like doing online education, for example. Now, again, you have to have the motivated buyers, you have to have the actual tools to do that. We do have all those tools. So actually we're doing more than just saying, here's what to do. We're actually going through how to do it. And we also got a whole session which is all about health, which is one of the most important things. It's not the virus that kills you, it's your body's reaction to it, right? So it's so much more about what state your body is in if you actually even get exposed to it. This is not just about being healthy. This is about cutting your stress. It's about having higher energy. It's coming from a positive mindset. All these things are body first, right? Because your body leads your emotions lead to your thoughts. And most of us are actually shutting down, staying indoors, and not realizing there's things we can and should be doing right now. Using this as an opportunity to build our mindfulness, build our health, and really, like we're talking about this, one of the things that I was sharing was with Joe Formosa, who runs our Health Dynamics. I was like, Joe, how quickly can you take your detox program, which is a 20-day detox, and turn that into an immunity program? And she's like, the whole thing's about immunity. I said, exactly, but you don't tell people that, right? So let's actually get people really clear what is the things that actually trigger a stronger immunity system and build an immunity community. Like, let's actually create something that actually gets everyone who's in this sharing knowledge with each other. Now's the time to connect. Everyone's looking to connect more than ever before, right? Which is super important. And then we actually go through a step-by-step cash flow plan. So this is where already we've got a full plan in place, and there are very specific ways to make this simple. So even if you don't like numbers, there's some easy ways to visualize it, to get it up on a board, to get yourself numbers first, so that you actually are able to ensure that you're going to weather the next couple of months. And then that worry goes away. Crisis specials, which is all about how do you actually set up those specials in the first place, like the ones that we're setting up, or remote sales, how do you generate sales from home? These are the things that we're actually giving examples and showing how-tos for those who don't know how to do it. And for those of you who actually have a retail store or a restaurant, it's like, well, how do I do this? We're going to show you how you actually even set up home deliveries. Like, our restaurants are all doing home deliveries now, right? So we're actually making money even if people aren't coming into our restaurants at the moment. There's all ways to do that, but you have to have a clear, concise plan of how to do that. There's more modules. I'll come to some of these later. But what I will say is that for any of you already just listening into this who go, you know what, this is something I should be a part of. I really welcome you to come join us. Now's the time for us to be connecting with each other. And so just, again, you don't have to do anything if you're already part of our community, because we're going to be inviting you to the Monday session anyway. It's going to be there in our Genius Entrepreneur Mastermind. If you actually aren't part of it yet and you want to do it, just go register. Like $297 is the whole price for the whole thing, right? So we're not charging a lot to be part of this, but you're going to get a massive amount of value being in it. And more importantly, we're all going to be learning from each other as we go through this. And we're going to have so many success stories. We're going to be sharing them all the way through each week as well, of how people are turning their situation around and really turning this into the results they're looking for as well. So this whole next step, the second step, which is turning cash versus crash, is about to what extent are you really making sure that you are setting up a proper cash flow forecast and then strategy, which is going to enable you to immediately be able to get those results. I'll give you one more example, right? Like we basically had Moira, who is in Ireland, and she actually trained speakers on their events. Well, that's a challenge if you don't have events anymore. And I was sharing different strategies. First of all, how you turn an event into a virtual event. You don't take a one-day event and turn it into a one-day virtual event. You take that one-day event and you turn it into 6 hourly sessions or 5 hourly sessions over a week. And people will show up for those sessions in a way they won't show up for 8 hours online, right? So understanding how you design from one to the other. However, the biggest thing I was saying was, if you've got someone who's a speaker and is used to making $100,000 speaking to 200 people, the real question now is how do they make that $100,000 not going out speaking to 200 people all at one time, but actually just speaking to 50 of their top people one-on-one, because those 50 people would love to have a personal conversation with their mentor or with the speaker. And if you're actually able to really hone into solving the problem that you solve well for them, so they really get the value from that, and then you understand how to design out the next step from that value that they get from you, people will always flow down the path of trust. Everyone's looking for help. And if they know you can help them in a particular way, then they're going to actually want that help. But this is like super important. There's always a way to actually make it happen. It's about, for you specifically, what's your way? And I know if I had the chance to speak to you directly, listening to this with the other 2,000 people listening to this, I don't know enough about your story at this point, but if we actually had a way for us to interact on a 12-week program, on a 4-week program over 12 modules, I know for sure that you'll be getting that kind of level of real support, especially with our whole team that are all now activated. Like every day we're on to say, right, who do we speak to around the world? We're going to be reaching more people every day than we reach at our events or at our locations, just because of the volume of communication that we're actually giving out on a one-to-one basis to all the people we care most about, to our customers. And they can see that, they can experience that. So this is your time to shine. One of the big things that I've said over and over again, which is in times of crisis, it's either an excuse for mediocrity or it is opportunity for excellence, right? So like choose the opportunity for excellence right now, because there's never been an opportunity where you've got all your clients and communities and even partners sitting at home or stuck trying to figure out what to do. So now's the time for you to really basically shine and show just what value you actually have to deliver. Oh, sorry, guys. Looks like I just dropped off. I have just come on again. That was my internet that just dropped off. I'll just talk about setting the suspense. I was just going into our third step here. So I want to kind of just share this with you. Here we go. Here is the third key. Third key, slow versus grow. Like this is so important because you have probably been focusing at expanding versus enhancing over the last couple of years because we've all been growing. Slowing versus growing is like, if you know my wealth dynamic system, is about the difference of the head in the clouds compared to the ear to the ground, right? But now's the time to be sensory, not the time to be out there basically like, trying to just expand everything that you're doing. And so what does this look like? It looks like taking more time with your team, taking more time with each of your most important clients. Your easiest way to grow is go to your 20% of your top clients and just be going to them to find out what the biggest problem is and how you can be of service to them. And so that's slowing things down as opposed to speeding things up. Frequency, this is the paradox of time. When you increase frequency, you slow time down. It's like when someone's in high adrenaline, they're actually increasing their frame rate, which actually then slows time down around them. When we basically are increasing our frame rate in our company, it slows time down. Before a week would go pretty quick between meetings. Now a day lasts like a week between meetings, which means that we've just lived 4 weeks in the last 4 days, right? Because we slowed everything down by increasing frequency. So once you actually increase frequency in your rhythm, you then actually have the time to say, well, what are we gonna do between now and tomorrow? And that time expands out. It's like, right, I'm gonna speak to these 10 different people. And in this next day, as I speak to those 10 people, that's gonna give me a whole amount of new knowledge that I didn't have. I'm gonna review that by tomorrow morning. So just understanding that as you actually, oops, I don't know what just happened there. Let me just see if I can close that because I don't want to double link that. That was me trying to get back in a moment ago, actually. No, I think we're still good. Okay, so what's really super important about this is understanding that this is also about how you downshift. So many of you have seen the entrepreneur dynamic system that we put together. In fact, I'm just going to open up some of my entrepreneur dynamic slides here because one of the key things behind this was Seattle, which we actually ended up having to do virtually. That in Seattle, I was explaining how it was 100 years ago that we had the Wright brothers take off for the first time. And many people don't realize that between them taking off their plane and the first flight school, like it was actually 1910 before the first flight school, which was actually Orville Wright who set it up. This actually closed down because they kept on crashing planes. And it was actually 1926, 26 years after the first actual flight that the Air Commerce Act got launched, which actually then meant that licenses had to be issued to pilots. You couldn't fly without having a license. And it was actually 1967, a good 60 years later, before the FAA was created, and you actually had to actually register your flight plans as you went flying around, right? So this is like a massive amount of time before people basically realized they had to learn how to fly so they wouldn't crash. And we have been doing this as an entire humanity. Like we have been building businesses and taking off just like those planes took off with everyone crashing. Right now, suddenly there's a big storm and everyone's realizing they don't know how to fly and all those planes are crashing. And so when this is happening at this point, the most important thing is to say, well, what are the steps to ensure that you can fly? And one of the most important aspects of this, which we're giving everyone who's coming into our community right now and in GEM, is that you actually get to take a number of steps, which is all part of the entrepreneur dynamic system, to find out, first of all, what's your level of expertise? What you're likely to find is in terms of your level of expertise, which is the level of business you're currently running, or your level of flow, it's going to drop down during a crisis. So if you are at yellow level, which is someone who is very good at being able to run your own business, and suddenly you don't have the business anymore, you're going to be dropping down to either orange worker, where you have to go and say to someone, listen, I've got time, I'm willing to give you some of my time and actually get paid for that because people aren't buying my products, or dropping 2 levels down to red, or even worse, 3 levels down infrared, where you actually go negative cash flow. And the most important thing is to very quickly move yourself up to a high level. Your company will also drop down to a low level, which is how many customers you actually have working with you. So this is the impact meter. And at every step, there is a plus and a minus and a do and a don't, depending on what level you're at. So you'll find out when you take this test, which is a free test, you'll find out exactly what is your impact level, which is your level as a pilot. You'll find out exactly what your company level is, your enterprise level, which is the level of your actual plane. Like, is it Is it a small private plane, or is it a commercial liner, or is it a rocket ship? And at every level, we have got the steps as to what to do, what not to do. Because if you find yourself suddenly going, geez, I did have 100 clients, but now I'm struggling to get 10, right? Then what you need to do to get those 10 in terms of actually saying, right, okay, this is not the time. Like, this is a good example, like getting those 10 customers. This is not the time to be trying to scale to strangers who don't know you. This is not the time to be going out there and saying, I'm looking for new customers. This is a time to actually double down on your existing customers, grow your customer base from people who trust you to people who trust them. And so you'll see that the post that I'm doing right now, I'll give you some examples, right? Like on the post that I've been doing recently, you'll see many, many people who are actually sharing it. Even like the video I did the other day, the live video, you can see just like how many people were on here, how many shares took place. These different people all said, hey, I want my friends to see this as well. So people who trust me are sending it on to people who trust them. And then similar with all the different posts that I've been doing, you know, in these different posts, there are the same things happening where like this post here, 1,100 likes, 900 shares. This was just like earlier this week where people are saying, I need this to be shared with other people. And then of course, the people who are sharing it, if I just click on it, I can see all the shares. You know, I can see everyone, even yesterday, still sharing this, like letting others know about it, other people then liking it as well. So people then saying, oh, who is this guy? And I've just seen my follower number go up pretty dramatically. It's now at 162,774. This has gone up by several thousand just this week because people are saying, I'm gonna follow this Roger Hamilton guy. And it's not because I've gone out and spent any money on advertising. I haven't gone out and spent any time basically like trying to get clever in marketing. I've just gone out sincerely sharing what actually is of value to my clients and my customers who are entrepreneurs, and then they're then passing that on to others as well. So this is the time to be thinking in that way. And also at the same time, product-wise, don't get caught up in delivering results without turning reputable value into a product, right? So if you're there thinking, well, you know, I'm just doing one-offs, but how do I turn this into something which is actually able to extend and turn to a much more of a stronger product? Folks are finding out what is and isn't replicable in the solutions your customers find most value in. So we're doing that right now, right? We're actually saying, right, we're going to do one-to-one calls with those who really want those calls, and then those who actually then are up for doing more of us, great. If they're not, well, then we'll give them something which actually we can repeat with many people at the same time, and we can scale that thing as well. So, you know, I know what I'm going to do with my time over the next 4 weeks. I know it's going to be with 1,000 of our most trusted customers and with those new ones who come on board. And that's fine. That's all that I need to be doing to make sure that we are going to be solid by delivering what people really want right now. And we're not going to be fretting about like, where do we find the customers or how do we grow the business, because we're just locking down and slowing things down and actually just taking more time with the people that are already there. And then everyone will thank you for it when you move out of it. We're also spending more time on our company meetings and our teams on what's the best ways for us to be actually supporting each other as well. So I'm getting more back into the training because we're actually shifting things around, back into communicating with the team as well. So super important on this one. The first thing about slowing is taking a breath. Take that breath and actually realize that everything's going to be okay. Right? We're all going to actually come out the other end of this, and we're all going to be wiser for sure. Some of us are going to have painful lessons because some of the things I'm sharing, it'll be too late before we put them in place. But all of us, we're going to have lessons. And this is the time, if we actually do slow down and actually ask, well, like, what are the things that are now accelerating, which I can now take advantage of? What are the things that allow me to grow? Like, you know, that's one of the things this month I'm doing is actually not just looking at who are the partners we really should be working with that we haven't spent time working with right now. Who are the people that we know are going to be hurting that we can actually support and be of value to, and they can be of value to us as well. Who are the people that actually would be the right people for us to acquire, so that as we actually start moving out of this, we've actually got those people on board, right? How do we really make the most of the fact that we are going to be listing our company? That's a given, because the short-term challenges are not going to jeopardize our long-term goals, right? So we want to make sure we navigate the short-term challenges while that's happening. So how do we really make sure that we do have the right messaging and the right people on board that can actually be supportive of that? That's what we're doing on the slow versus grow. So on this one here, ask yourself the question, what can I do right now that will allow me to be 5 times bigger and better a year from now by me being able to focus at what's going to slow us down and do a better job as opposed to doing a bigger job, right? The way to go faster is to go slower. So what is it I need to do to actually slow down and get things right before I start actually moving forward with my new paradigm? And that then leads to the next one, which is close versus far. On this one here, I do want to say for everyone on here that there is this crazy, crazy concept going out around the world, which is actually ending up taking us to the wrong place. And this is the concept of social distancing. So you're hearing this everywhere, social distancing. I mean, I just posted on my Facebook page this article from the World Health Organization. Health warning, minimizing watching, reading, listening to news that causes you to feel anxious or distressed, right? This whole thing here is about get connected to the people you love, right? It's like, this is not about social distancing. Now, yes, you don't want to be connected to people in the real world where you're going to pass on the virus, but you can connect to people. This is not the time for social distancing. This is time for social connection, right? This is not time for social isolation. This is time for social solidarity, right? It's for humanity to come together, not to fall apart. And the way that that happens is that we connect, but we connect online as opposed to in person, right? And that's what many of you are doing, right? You're actually on this call right now. You're connecting to each other. You'll be sending messages to me. I'll be sending them back to you as well, right? Because we're all connecting like never before. If you're not doing that and you're like, well, I've been told to stay at home, so I guess I'm just going to wait it out here, then you're doing the wrong thing, right? So this is not the time to isolate yourself. It's not the time to separate yourself, not from a spiritual and from a mental and from an emotional point of view. Yes, from a physical point of view, right? But you can actually have the same or higher level of connection spiritually, emotionally, and also in terms of thinking about knowledge and opportunity, that you can actually be more connected now than ever before. And that's what you should be thinking about. So this whole aspect of close versus far is saying, how am I getting closer to the people around me? How am I getting closer to my customers, closer to my team? How am I getting closer to the people I care about? As opposed to how do I distance myself from everybody? And if you think about it in that way and say, well, the only way I can do that is by doing it virtually or doing it by phone or doing it by Skype call or a conversation like this, then that's what I'm going to do. And actually set up each day on the basis of saying, who am I going to connect with today? And actually get to the end of the day with that connection, because all of us are social animals. And if you go through the day and you're like sitting on your own, your mind is going to start talking to you in negative talk. You're going to start fearing things more. You're going to start worrying about things more, right? You know, far is just one letter away from fear, right? So the moment you start stepping into that space, you're already going the wrong way. All the more reason that I say, you know, the likes of what we're doing is about linking all this together, which I'm going to show you in a moment with the final 8 things. Because the final thing I want to get to, this one here, give back versus give up. Give back versus give up is realizing that we have no limit to what we can give. That we are already so lucky with what we have compared to so many people in the world that are struggling every single day. We just happen to now be faced with the fact that we don't have everything that we have. One of my favorite sayings is, wealth isn't about how much money you have. Wealth is what you're left with if you lose your money. Like right now today, if suddenly it's like, holy cow, where do all the flow goes? It doesn't stop you from having the trust that you built with the community around you. It doesn't stop you from having your thoughts, your knowledge. It doesn't stop you from having the opportunities that can be flowing your way, right? But if you don't have all those things happening your way, then it's going to feel very lonely. It's going to feel very empty. And so this is the time to say, well, how do I get that connection? It's not by trying to get things from other people. It's by giving back to those people and actually realizing that now is the time when it is easier than ever to be acknowledged and appreciated by others for the things that you do. Let me show you this little article, which is about just how much things can totally shift when you start thinking differently about what you're doing. This article is one that I posted last week, the one which was around Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, and Elon Musk. And in this article, I share what each of them did in the last crises. During the 1986 stock market crash, Steve Jobs found himself running out of money. He'd been kicked out of Apple in 1985, sold his shares, spent most of his money on founding Next. And instead of sulking over Apple or struggling with Next, he decided to double down on buying George Lucas's animation studio with his last $10 million. The studio was renamed Pixar, which then made a $26 million deal 3 years later. So it didn't happen overnight, and eventually sold to Disney for $7.4 billion. And Steve Jobs ended up becoming the biggest shareholder in Disney. I mean, pretty phenomenal story. But basically, the whole point was, if he had actually run from fear, or if he got too stuck on just thinking about what he's doing with Next, instead of realizing this was the opportunity to actually not just give back to those around him, but give back to his future, right? Actually, he went to George Lucas and said, look, here's how much I want to pay acquire your company for. And George Lucas originally said no, but then turned around afterwards and said, look, this is the best thing that could have happened to me, because I'm not ready to manage it myself. It's losing too much money. And then that actually was giving back to George Lucas as well. During the dot-com bust of 2001, Jeff Bezos' Amazon lost 90% of its value. So this is a story about how he learned about his cash conversion cycle, giving back to everyone around him. He actually shifted all of the cash flow exactly the way I was saying it, so that instead of him having to wait 71 days for the money to come back after he bought stock, he actually got a negative cycle of 24 days where people were paying him before he had to pay out, right? And just because he had to focus at the cash flow strategy. And so he actually did exactly that. And now, of course, Amazon is doing like amazingly today because he learned from the last crash. What you learn in the crash today will not just navigate you through the next one, but it will actually set you up for success in the next 10 years. So what you design for the next 10 years has everything to do with what you do right now. Like in the 2008 crash, that's when Elon Musk started off, right? This one here, 2008 was the year the global financial crisis hit Elon Musk. He said it was definitely the worst year of my life. He'd run out of money, spending the entire $180 million on SpaceX, Tesla, and Solar City. He says, I remember waking up on the Sunday before Christmas in 2008 and thinking to myself, man, I never thought I was someone who would ever be capable of a nervous breakdown. I felt this is the closest I've ever come because it seemed a pretty dark place. And then instead of closing one or more of his companies, he made a commitment. He said, no, I'm going to commit to making this work, right? And by putting that out in the universe and saying, I'm going to fight, right? Then it was a couple of days later, NASA called because they knew that he was committed to it, where other people were actually closing shop, and said, you got the $1.5 billion contract. And I couldn't even hold the phone. I just blurted out, I love you guys, right? And then from there, Tesla did the same thing. That commitment is actually what then led people around him to believe in him. And that then led them to actually then grow too. And so this is really the question during today's crisis. Are you looking outside or inside? Are you making this an excuse for mediocrity or an opportunity for excellence? This is about giving back, not just to those around you, but it's giving back to yourself. You know, it's realizing that we very rarely get these moments when we can actually just pause and say, what's life really all about? Was it about the business I had, the job I had, running around, being busy, doing things in a crazy way, which was inefficient in the first place? Or is it about something bigger and better where I can actually redesign my life right now? And so on like the second half of the cash flow course, and I'm really hoping some of you have actually come join me on this, you've had a chance to look at this while you've been listening to me, that on the next next 6 of the different modules, we actually go through in week 3, week 4, all these different elements. Digital products, how to design and launch them online. If you're thinking, holy cow, all those things that Roger's showing me, they're all digital companies that are all actually growing right now. If this goes on for the next year, I could be one of them. How do I do that? We'll show you exactly how to do that, and we'll give you examples of it as well. Global opportunities, best money makers, like the ways that people are actually making money now. I'm going to show you what they look like. And this is 3 weeks from now, which is a lifetime away. What people are going to be doing then. I'll show you actual examples of all these successes happening in our community and the ones outside, where you're going to be surrounded by success as opposed to be surrounded by the fear and the panic that's showing up in the media. And then also smart investments, how to invest in a downturn, right? We're going to be raising several $1 million in the next couple of months. And you're like, well, how's that possible? And it's because we know what it takes when there's a downturn. You know, within our IPO and our plan, which we have submitted to our advisors for our IPO, we actually explain what the difference is of an up market and a down market. All of you who are investors on this call, if you've been to my event, you've seen me talk about this. It's all come true. And in this, we actually have talked about how we are growing the #1 entrepreneur education group, where everyone around the world, including the World Economic Forum, has said, we need a new 21st century education system. We're now delivering on that with our solution of our curriculum, our faculty, which includes the top entrepreneurs in the world, our community, and also our locations. Like, we're not giving up on this dream. Like, we have our dream. You'll have your dream too. And the most important thing is to actually set it up for success to do that. And what we're doing, and we're offering to our investors, is a convertible loan where they're going to be able to take their money, which is sitting in US dollars or in pound sterling or any other currency, which could drop dramatically as they are right now, and put it into a basket of currencies, because we're a global company that is limited, that there's going to be a New York Stock Exchange once it actually takes off again, but actually incorporated in Singapore, which means we're in one of the most stable countries in the world when it comes to managing the financial system. They are not going out printing money right now. And so that currency is going to actually grow pretty dramatically against some of the Western currencies which are being debased right now. And if you're investing in something like that and you've got the opportunity to get 10 or 12% interest, you've got a loan that's going to get repaid, you're getting it in a country and in a currency which is hedged against your current currency, and you can convert that into IPO shares. We know that anyone who's got money and who trusts us already and is looking for a safe place for the money, that money will come to us. Like I said at the end, there is already out there more money than ever before, because people are just slowing it down, holding on to it, and not putting it into things they would normally invest in. So this is the ideal time to actually then be out there supporting others as well. So we're actually going through that in terms of smart investments. And then in addition to that, in the final week, we actually reform who you are as a leader. TLC stands for trust, leadership, and communication. All money is going to get attracted right now to those they trust most, to those that lead best, and to those who communicate most effectively. And so once you understand these three, you realize it takes nothing but time to build these three up. By the Wednesday, Silver Lining, the biggest 2020 trends to profit from, we actually get ourselves set up for the future. And by then, we are going to have this super positive group that actually are using all these tools to get over the fear and get right into the action. And then finding future vision, how to design a brand new future. What is your future actually going to look like? Like, what is it you're going to design based on the new paradigm of where you're going? All of this that I'm doing for myself as well as for everyone else, because I'm so excited for this journey, the opportunity to be able to actually connect with so many of you, to be on this journey for 4 weeks while the rest of the world is losing their head, and actually creating the whole new reality, which we're all going to be living in for the coming decade, not just for the next couple of weeks. This whole thing could actually last quite easily for at least a couple of months, if not a couple of years. You have to be ready for that. Don't just hope that suddenly things are going to turn around. If there's a cure and suddenly everyone has that cure and we can all basically stop this exponential curve, great. If we end up luckily getting things under control, it's still going to be several months before things even return to any kind of normality. And by then the entire financial system is going to be shot anyway. And we're going to actually have an entirely different landscape of what's left standing at the end of this too. Make sure you're one of the ones that are left standing. And the only way that happens is you get connected to others around you in order for you to actually really ensure that you are delivering on the promise of why you're here in the first place. So this final thing, the final step that I shared here was this whole step about making sure that you are giving back versus giving up. And if you're not even feeling like giving up right now, it's going to be the actions you take at the moment, which is going to ensure you don't even have to think about giving up as we're actually stepping forward into the new paradigm as well. I really hope that everything I've shared has been of value. I'd love for you to post whatever's been your biggest learning that you've had out of what we've gone through. If you are listening to all of this and you've been inspired, come onto my Facebook page and actually drop a note to me as well. I'd love to actually see whatever it is that you have got as learning from this call as well. And final thing, come join us. Like the link is there. Come join us on our next 4 weeks together. We're really looking forward to it. There's lots of things I've mentioned on this call as well, which are things that you'll hear much more about when you actually come into our community and become part of this as well. We're fighting. We're making sure that we're bringing all the best knowledge and all the best steps and examples to those of you who are actually up for coming in, circling the wagons and being part of this community as well. So just jump in, be part of it. I'll see you on our Monday call for those who actually do come and join us, and we'll be already getting ourselves right into momentum as we go as well. Thanks everyone very much for getting connected in. Make sure you stay safe, make sure you stay healthy, wash your hands, and at the same time, don't distance yourself in terms of your heart, your spirit, and your opportunities. Make sure you get connected to those around you. This is a time not for human separation, this is a time for human solidarity, and that's all of humanity. So on that note, I'm going to say goodbye, and I look forward to catching up with you again very soon. See you all later. Bye.